Just a quick disclaimer, I know most of you might feel that it's all Michael Jordan's fault that the Wizards suck for all those years. I just want to tell you in this video, we'll show you some of the reason that the Wizards suck so bad for so long, besides Michael Jordan. The Washington Wizards were never the same after Gilbert Arenas. Not because he left, but because everything that started unraveling when he did. The gun incident didn't just end Arenas' career, it left a stain on the franchise. But here's the question. Was that the moment everything changed? Did the Wizards ever recover from that? Because since then, they've had stars, draft picks, and chances to rebuild, yet somehow, they've only gotten worse. And now, they're just not struggling. They've become one of the worst teams in NBA history. So how did this happen? Let's go back to where it all began. After the Arenas fallout, the Wizards were left searching for stability. And at the center of it all was Ernie Grunfeld, the team's general manager. Someone who had already been in charge since 2003. You might think, after a public crisis like Arenas' locker room scandal, a franchise would reset, clean house, bring in new leadership, start fresh. But the Wizards didn't. Instead, they stayed the course. Grunfeld ran the front office for another 10 years, overseeing drafts, trades, and free agency periods that could have altered the team's path, but rarely did. They didn't tank, they didn't contend, they just floated in the middle. There was hope. His name was John Wall. Drafted number 1 overall in 2010, Wall's lightning speed and playmaking made the Wizards relevant again. And drafting John Wall might probably be one of the few moves that I can agree with what the Wizards did, because after drafting John Wall, how can you go ahead and draft this guy? In 2011, they used a 6th overall pick on Jan Vesley, a player who never averaged more than 5 points per game and was out of the league in 3 seasons. And that was just one of the questionable moves that the Wizards made. But even so, they still made the playoffs because of John Wall, and they made it at least 4 times. And they managed to sign Paul Pierce for 1 year, and that was fun to watch. But you know what happened next. The Wizards were about to go all in on John Wall, making him the foundation of the Wizards franchise. But nobody foresaw what would happen next. And it didn't even happen on the court. John Wall got injured at home. That's crazy. That changed the whole trajectory of everything the Wizards were trying to do. And it also changed John Wall's career forever. But even with all the injuries, everybody questioned who would have been in control of this team. Mind you, Bradley Beal was on a crazy high, dropping 30, 20, so he looked like a star. So it began to have a little rift behind the scenes between Wall and Bradley Beal. So the Wizards had to make a choice at that point. John Wall couldn't stay healthy and Bradley Beal was basically carrying the team. So they went and got Russell Westbrook from the Houston Rockets. They added Kristaps Porzingis, but because of their financial situation, with all the bad contracts they made prior, they really couldn't put a team around Bradley Beal. And the Wizards didn't stop there with the bad contracts. They gave Bradley Beal a no-trade clause. And you see the effects of that today. Like, Bradley Beal was the only one in the NBA with a no-trade clause. Bradley Beal. That is crazy. These are some of the bad contracts that they had. Ian Mahinmi's $64 million. Andrew Nicholson's $26 million. Otto Porter Jr.'s $106 million contracts. Each of them aging poorly and handcuffing the team's financial flexibility. But behind all those decisions was another issue: ownership, as usual. Ted Leonsis, who also owns the NHL's Capitals, often treated the Wizards like a side project. He stuck with Grunfeld far too long. He avoided drastic changes. Rather than pushing for a rebuild or demanding excellence, he settled for stability when the franchise needed direction. That hesitancy at the top filtered down, and by the time Grunfeld was fired in 2019, the Wizards were already drifting towards irrelevance. All he basically cared about was the NHL Capitals. Forget about the Washington Wizards. He just let Ernie Grunfeld just run the team. And for what is reported, they said that Ernie Grunfeld was a pushover. He didn't have the players take any accountability for anything. They couldn't build a team around Bradley Beal. They traded away their young core. They traded Kelly Oubre Jr., one of the only promising young wings, for Trevor Ariza, hoping for a playoff push. It didn't happen. In the void left by Wall, Bradley Beal took over. Beal put up all-star numbers, 30 plus points per game, elite shot making, national attention, but as his production soared, the Wizards still couldn't build a roster that made sense around him. The winning never followed. Washington stayed in the middle, just competitive enough to avoid high lottery picks, just inconsistent enough to miss the real playoff runs. By 2023, it was time. The Wizards traded Bradley Beal, officially closing a chapter on a run that never lived up to its potential. In today's NBA, building through the draft is essential, especially for non-glamour markets. But from 2014 to 2022, the Wizards repeatedly struck out. Troy Brown Jr. failed to develop. Rui Hachimura flashed potential but lacked consistency. Denny Avdija became a solid rotation piece but not a star. Meanwhile, they passed on players like Devin Booker, Tyrese Halliburton, and Donovan Mitchell, each drafted shortly after the Washington Wizards picks. Even when they found promising players like Kelly Oubre Jr., they moved on too soon, chasing short-term gains. A full decade in the lottery, and not one player turned into a franchise cornerstone. And that failure wasn't just about bad luck, it reflected a larger issue. Washington's scouting and development model didn't evolve with the league. They often drafted for positional need instead of upside, and they lacked the player development infrastructure that teams like OKC quietly built behind the scenes. Even when the Wizards had talent, they lacked the leadership to make it matter. Since 2012, the team has cycled through Randy Whitman, Scott Brooks, Wes Unseld Jr. None of them built a clear system. None of them elevated the players around them. And none of them were given the long-term support that teams like the Heat or Warriors provide their coaching staff. Wizards players have consistently entered the league without structure, without a consistent scheme or philosophy to develop within. And when coaching changes become the norm, young players suffer. Continuity disappears and growth stalls. That's been the story in Washington for a decade. The one thing I can say is the Washington Wizards made moves, but they just wasn't the correct ones. They shipped out Westbrook for Kyle Kuzma. By 2023, the Wizards finally committed to rebuilding. They brought in Will Dawkins, a former Thunder executive with a track record of long-term vision. And from day one, the focus shifted. They acquired youth, stacked draft assets, and stopped chasing the middle. They traded for Jordan Poole, drafted Bilal Coulibaly in 2023, and Alex Sarr in 2024, both long, athletic, defensive-minded prospects. Players built for the modern NBA, but the transition wasn't smooth. Jordan Poole experiment failed, which wasn't a surprise to anyone. Kyle Kuzma was also unhappy with the direction of the Wizards, which resulted in his performance. In February, the Wizards decided to trade Kyle Kuzma to the Milwaukee Bucks in a 4-player deal. In return, the Wizards received A.J. Johnson.
Wizards with a chance to tie or take the lead. A.J. for the lead. Oh, yeah!
A skilled guard, drafted 23rd overall in 2024, the 2028 first-round pick swap, and Chris Middleton, primarily included for salary purposes. Middleton is likely to be part of the long-term plan, but A.J. Johnson might be. And with Kuzma gone, Coulibaly and Sarr have more room to develop. For the first time, the Wizards are actually making some decent moves. All of this rebuilding came with a cost: wins. This last season, the Wizards finished 15-67 with one of the worst point differentials in NBA history. It's avoid making hard choices. They clung to the middle, they extended flawed rosters, they feared starting over. That's changed. The front office now seems committed to the long game. Dawkins is making forward-thinking moves. Clear the deck, they've bet on the youth. During this offseason, they've unloaded Jordan Poole. They acquired CJ McCollum, Bob Carrington, and Cam Whitmore. They also got Trey Johnson through the draft. They might get the same results as the Pistons, but who knows? It's the Wizards. And if you like this video, please leave a like or a comment, subscribe. I appreciate you for watching. Thank you.